What are your night shift horror stories? Worked at a liquor store for a few years. One of the homeless guys, probably late 50s, that stood outside would ask for money, and 9 times out of 10, if they said no, he'd flash them his old wrinkly, crusty package. Had to chase him off every night so people didn't have to suffer that sight. Annoyingly, people who saw me chasing him off or threatening to call the cops often gave me dirty looks, like as if I hated homeless people or treat them like trash, when in actuality, was saving them from that which you cannot unsee. This didn't become a horror story until recently, but as a teen, I used to close down the gas station or truck stop I worked at alone. My boss used to pop up out of the shadows as I was closing down the till with the backup lights on. He'd be super calm and act like it wasn't creepy at 11 p.m. when he should be home with his family. He was even at my high school graduation. He and his wife's number's still in my phone. Anyhow, he's currently on trial for murdering a prostitute via street-bing her to death. Back in '94, cold case potentially solved via DNA and modern science. Oh man, I hate recalling this story. I work night shift at a rehab facility. We have a protected gate with a camera looking down from above, and one of those doorbell cameras. In the office, the camera monitor is on one wall, and the doorbell monitor is on another. I was doing some paperwork and see this guy walk past, stop for a few seconds, then slowly turned around, walked back, and stared up at the camera. And he kept staring. The facility is in a rough neighborhood, so I'm fairly used to folks hanging out around the gate and usually ignore it. But the way he was staring was off-putting. Like, his eyes and expression were hollow and dead, almost as if he were in deep thought about something horrible. I was pretty sure he was zonked on synthetics. I used the intercom to see if he was okay, but he just kept staring directly at the camera. We have a rule: if it's not hurt or trying to come through the fence, just let it be. No sense in engaging needlessly with somebody potentially hostile or F-king with the locals. Y'all, he stood there and stared at that camera for 2 hours. That same dead-eyed expression, staring right at me. I did a round and came back to find him gone, which only creeped me out more. Worked a parking garage at the airport, cleaning the top deck, and noticed about 100 ravens all over a truck, with a tarp over the bed. Took my flashlight, expecting something awful. Noticed as I got closer, the smell and the ravens taking turns going in a hole they had torn open, and popping out covered in gunk. Some guy left a broke-down beater with a couple animal carcasses in the back to rot. No heads. Checked the logs, and the damn truck had been there since November, and it was April, so everything was just thawing and breaking down. Used to work nights at a Home Depot. There was one time where, for a week or so, store stayed open 24 hours. For the most part, this wasn't really a problem. Typically, nobody comes shopping for home improvement items at 2 in the morning, except that one couple that came looking for marble countertops at 1:30 in the morning. And the woman was wearing a nice dress. I guess there was also that one young lady who came looking for a toilet paper roll holder a little after midnight. I had just gotten off my first break, and she was wearing jorts and one of those white with black belt stereotypical karate outfits. She was oddly specific about which roll holder to get too. But the real story lies within the insulation. It was nearing 3 in the morning, and me and another guy were stocking insulation, as well as fixing the bays and some such maintenance. A bunch of bigger 30s had fallen in their bay, and while I was sorting through them, F-skin hand came out of the mess and grabbed my arm. I lost my mind enough for not only the guy I was working with to freak out, but also for my boss, who was across the store, to come check out the commotion. Turns out a homeless drunkard had come into the store at some point, and I can only assume before the night crew showed up, and had made a nest in the insulation where he fell asleep. The dude was in bad shape too, like, far gone into whatever inebriation that we had to call the police to remove him. I was always a little more cautious around the insulation after that. For at least the time, the store stayed open 24 hours. Did hospital security for about 2 months. It was small hospital out in the sticks, so we were responsible for removing patients who had passed from their rooms and transferring into the morgue freezer. We had just brought a decedent to the morgue, and right before we were about to transfer them to the freezer, their cell phone rang. Granted, pretty tame compared to some stories, but at the time, it gave us a decent fright. I worked in a residential treatment center for teen girls. One girl with some severe trauma or abuse came sleepwalking into the room screaming to please untie her while clawing at her wrists. She was begging me to help her because he's torturing me. I sat her down and pulled her bracelets and watch off. She went completely limp, then got up and went back to bed. It freaked me out seeing the raw emotion of her trauma, since she was always smiling and relatively calm during the day. Another time I was doing my nightly checks and a guy suddenly walked out from behind the door, coming at me. I screamed and threw my flashlight at him. It was a smiley face balloon. Worked as an evening manager at a major Hilton property. Got a complaint from a bunch of guests about the noise coming from one of the rooms. Turns out, a drunken man was beating the shit out of his wife and had the door barricaded so we couldn't get in. I called the cops, and they had to get into the room using the balcony from the next room over. I'm still traumatized by what I saw. When they finally arrested him and got the wife out of the room, she was covered in blood. It was horrifying. We have had people slit their wrists in the bathroom, OD in the bathroom, have SX on the floor of the bathroom. One of the managers were attacked by a shoplifter with a hatchet. Another got macked in his face. His beard saved him from most of it. Lovely bunch. The scariest thing that I have heard was one Christmas day when the store was closed. The alarm went off. A manager lived down the street, so he had to be the one to go check it out. He came in, shut off the alarm, then checked for any signs that someone had broken. Nothing. He hears a child's laugh. Now, he was alone in the store. No one else was with him. He looks for the kid, but can't find anything. Hears the laugh a few more times, then goes to check the cameras. Nothing. He locked up and refused to go back into the store alone. The only creepy thing I have personally experienced was being on a register, away from most everyone else. I would constantly feel like someone was behind me. It would creep me out in the middle of the night. Years later, I hear someone talking about things falling off the shelves for no reason in a particular spot. We had a remodel, and the spot was where that register had been. I avoid that area at night now. Used to work night shift at a middle school. Every night while cleaning out the boys' locker room, I would hear at least one locker slam shut, sometimes more. This creeped me out when I started, but after a couple of months I got used to it. One night while cleaning one of the girls' locker room, heard a girl scream. I walked out of the locker room, even looked outside the building, didn't see anybody. Before that, I worked at the high school. I'd randomly hear doors open and close. Nowadays, I work day shift at another school. About a year ago, I just got to the building to begin my shift. It was still dark out, and I was turning on all the lights. When I walked by the main office, I heard what sounded like someone ransacking the place, papers being tossed. I heard what sounded like a table or file cabinet being dragged. I remember my first thought was, man, somebody must have lost something important. Then I clicked. It was 6 in the morning, and it was either Thanksgiving or Christmas break, meaning there was no school, and there shouldn't be anybody in there. Took me a second to work up the courage to go in and check it out. When I did, nobody was there, and nothing was out of place. Finally, last month, I get a call from dispatch at AM. The fire alarm was going off, and they needed somebody to go turn it off. As soon as I walk in, I freak out. The alarm is blaring, but what scared me was the strobe light that flashes with the alarm. The building was pitch black, except every other second when that strobe lit the halls up. It looked like something straight out of a horror movie where they're looking for the killer. I was half expecting to see someone pop up out of nowhere when the halls lit up. Working third shift security at a condo, and a mother left the bathroom to check on their mac and cheese. Her 2-year-old drowned in the tub. Once the police were done, my boss called me and told me I had to go talk to the family and find out what happened. Even though we knew from the police telling us. My daughter was about 2 at the time. It broke my heart to even hear the story from the guy. I relieved. And then I had to go ask the family to tell some Dumas rent a cop about it as well. I'm a labor and delivery or nursery nurse. Mostly, it's call lights alarming from rooms that are completely empty. Sometimes it would coincide with APX, the time of death on another unit, or be the anniversary of a fetal demise. However, my creepiest. We have a button to push after a delivery to play a lullaby over the PAW system announcing a birth through the hospital. One night, no one was even in the same room as the button, and the lullaby started playing. It did that twice. Then we unplugged the entire thing. It still went off once more that night, and again a few days later, despite being entirely disconnected. Found out that on another floor a patient's condition suddenly deteriorated. They coded, were resuscitated, then finally passed around the same times as the lullaby. That was a few years ago, and no one ever heard it do that before or since. Security officer here posted one night to an old site that apparently was a hospital being turned into a rest home, with no power on site. All I had was my flashlight and laptop to watch movies. It was a 12-hour watch. Place was massive, and at night, you literally can't see FCAC all. Anyways, the company had put up a temporary security camera that every time it picks up motion, the F-Ken thing sends of a loud siren sound for about 30 seconds. First time that thing went off, I went to investigate with emergency service on speed dial and goosebumps flaring. I wouldn't seem to find what was causing it to go off. It then would go off a couple more times into the night. It got to the point where I would just let it do its thing, but every time it went off, it would send shivers down my spine. When we do our handover with the next guard, I would tell him all the time how the siren just goes off at night all the time. I haven't been back in a while, but man, I still think about that place till this day. It scares me. Was an orderly in a hospital. Two of us were sitting in the basement office adjacent to the morgue. A guy passed our office, looking at us a little shifty, came back again, and asked if we had access to the morgue. We said, yes, thinking he was doing a pickup for a funeral home, but that seemed strange given it was around 12:30. Nope. He wanted to pay us to let him in and leave him alone with the bodies for an hour. We escorted him up to security. Apparently he had tried it in the past, as security knew him. It was 3 a.m. Popular Canadian coffee shop. There is one old baker in the back that rarely interacts with me past a dirty joke, or a dirtier ditty from his Navy days. Other than that, I'm alone. Not another soul around the area, and I expect it to remain so for at least an hour yet. I'm boxing up the day-olds for the homeless shelter when I swear I see something out of the corner of my eye. It's behind me. I turn, then look down. There's a small child standing there. I'm struck dumb with how absurd the situation is. How did he get behind the counter? I didn't hear the door open, or see him come through the counter. I scan the storefront. No one. I yell for the baker in case he has a friend or something visiting that lost their kid. He comes over, and like me, does a double take at the kid, and is baffled. Kid starts muttering incoherently. I get him a glass of water and a donut hole, and the baker runs out of the store to do a perimeter of the block. I call the non-emergency line, and explain I have a little kid with no parents. I can't get any information from the boy, just mumbles. I can't make out. Police arrive. Baker comes back, says that he can't find anyone else in the streets. The guy from the 24/7's corner store said he'll keep an eye out. Police try to speak to the kid and also get nothing but mutterings and half-hearted gestures. They take him away. I see them again for their morning coffee, and they told me the little guy walked several kilometers from the nearest reservation in the dead of night to my store. He had got into his parents' medicine cabinet and just walked out of the house. I'm floored. It must have taken that poor baby hours to get to me. Seeing him behind me like that in the dead of the night still shakes me. Spooked me more than the guy that threw a pot of coffee at me. The woman that tried to stab me with the plastic spoon, because I refused to give her a metal one, and the dude that waited around for 4 hours hoping to catch me alone so he could teach me a lesson since I didn't have the flavor of bagel he wanted. Warning. Medical gross stuff incoming. I worked in an emergency room. The worst night that comes to mind involves a patient that was bitten by a baby timber rattlesnake. He was bleeding out of every single orifice by the time he got to us. More blood than I'd ever seen before outside of a motorcycle vs. 75 mph head first to asphalt. I don't remember how many doses of crofab we gave him, but it was the hospital's entire supply. But trying to get him stabilized, arranging the helicopter transport to a bigger and better equipped facility, all the blood. Those weren't the worst parts. The worst part was when the patient lost control of his bowels. I will never, ever forget that smell. I spent the entire time standing by the door with the battery-powered fan and a handful of gauze pads saturated with cinnamon oil, trying to reduce some of the smell. The doctor occasionally stuck her head out just so I could waft the cinnamon oil in her face. Yes, by some miracle, the patient did end up surviving, and as far as I know, he made a full recovery. But the blood, the smell, and just the shock of it all. Yeah, don't underestimate a baby timber rattlesnake. Many years ago, I worked at a regional radio station in the middle of King Nowhere, Australia. I was the overnight operator, keep the overnight playlist running, set up for the morning, do all the manual checks for the next day, and jump on the desk if anything funky happens. I spent a lot of time sitting in what was essentially a tin shed in the middle of a paddock, with my dog, shoes off, listening to 50s and 60 seconds music and doing crossword puzzles. Except one night when the roo shooters came through. They spooked the kangaroos in the paddock, and one of them jumped head first through our office window. So there's me barefoot and half asleep when this 6-tall kangaroo smashes through the glass window. Blood and glass everywhere. My dog starts chasing the kangaroo, chasing my dog, and the kangaroo bounds around the office, knocking shit off desks in the dark, bleeding everywhere. I ran and opened the studio bay doors, and my dog chased it outside, where I'm assuming the poor thing, the kangaroo, was shot. Then I had to call my boss. Worked night shift at a large grocery store, one that wasn't open overnight, but had a skeleton crew to work the loads and do prep and clean. I worked near the entrance large glass doors, but visually blocked off from my vantage point. Around I hear knocking on the doors. This isn't completely uncalled for. Usually, it's someone coming in for an early shift, but didn't have a key card. Sometimes, it's someone's food delivery, or sometimes a customer who thinks we are open, despite clearly being closed. I approach the door. It's a man that I don't recognize, wet from the rain. He looks normal enough, but something about him unnerved me. He had that vibe to him, you know, the one where it seems like maybe they're on their way to becoming a full-blown meth head. But for now, they still managed to give the appearance of functionality. He was holding his teeth together just enough to appear normal, but the edges were definitely shaky. Anyway, without unlocking the door, I announced that the store was closed. He told me that he just needed my help. His car had broken down in the parking lot and he needed a boost. I didn't drive, so I told him I couldn't help him. I should have walked away there, but he was out in the rain, and I did legitimately feel bad. So I told him I would see if any one of our few crew did drive. I did find someone who was willing to help, and got the night crew manager involved as well. We went out. Turns out, he was parked a bit off from the entrance, in a fairly secluded spot, and he had a lady with him. There was a similar vibe with her almost, but not exactly normal. It didn't click right away, but I figured they had been hooking up in the car in the parking lot, maybe left the radio or lights on and drained the battery. To me, that explained the weird, unnerving feeling. They either felt ashamed or guilty, and it was showing through. Anyway, my coworker goes over to help give them a boost. The manager and I stay out there with him nearby watching. The two lovebirds kept peeking over at us a bit uncomfortably. After a few moments, the coworker returns from the car and hurries us back inside. We don't see them drive off, which seems odd. We get inside, lock up again, and then the coworker thanks us for staying out there with him and not leaving him alone with them. He also caught on to the unnerving air about them, and it made him worried. What worried him more was when it also turned out that there was nothing wrong with their car. I used to work night shift as a care aide in an old folks' home. It was already creepy. The home was an old hospital that was converted. Some asshole kept walking around the courtyard after dark dressed as the Grim Reaper, knocking on doors. It was actually really scary. He ran off, and the facility got a security guard for a few weeks.